Oh, nostalgia, you are striking again while the iron is hot. We are just coming off of like Air, where Michael Jordan got Nikes, so I guess it's the perfect time to talk about another kind of like nostalgic fueled trip ride based on real events and real people. This time it's BlackBerry. Do you remember BlackBerry? If you are under the age of 25 watching this video right now, do you know what a BlackBerry is? I'm genuinely curious. I do. I was kind of a techie guy when I was in high school. I loved seeing all those new phones and the new devices we were building. And I knew my family had BlackBerries. I personally never had one, but I know what a BlackBerry is. So, the origin of BlackBerry, does that make for an interesting movie? I guess it could be. And you know what? Somebody tried to make a BlackBerry movie, and it was really good. So we have a BlackBerry movie. This is how the company started to where it ended up. It spans not that long, actually. It's like a quick startup because they didn't have that much time in the spotlight, if you really think about it. It's a fascinating movie. Now, like I said at the beginning of this, there have been like a string of these lately. You have like Tetris and Air. This one separates itself from those by just being a little more like chaotic in its energy. We're being fast and loose with the rules. We're just running around, spitting whatever we want to, shitting into the wind. None of it really matters. Like, we're just doing what we want with whatever we have. It's a very fascinating movie, and compared to all the other ones we've seen lately of this genre, this has the most interesting framework and camera movement and aesthetic it's going for. I'm a young man. I am very familiar with like the late 90s to early 2000s period of like development for technology and just all this new stuff we're trying to design and create. I studied that, I learned that, I loved seeing that. I grew up in the era where we're switching from VCRs to DVDs. I grew up in the era where we're building iPhones for everybody. So just being back in that world, now understanding it as an adult when I was just a child back then, it's so cool to see. Because I'm like, yeah, look at what we're doing here. Everyone is just loud and they're excited, and it's just a bunch of nerds in a room, in an office, just building shit, and then we build it bigger, and the nerds stay the same. It is such a nerdy movie, and I appreciate it so much for that. So many just moments where it's like, here's the title sequence. Here's every single piece of iconography that has used some sort of communication device before we actually built a communication device. It's about the history of the handheld smartphone. It's such a cool concept. It's so fun to see. It's such an interesting movie. Look, the camera movements are so loose. It is just kind of like a documentary. We blur in and out of focus at times. We shift perspective on certain things. It's doing a great job at presenting like the chaos of this pseudo Silicon Valley and Canada vibe. Look at these guys just having a great time and building computer stuff. So many moments of just like early 90s computer games. We're talking about VHS movies we're watching on movie night. So many references to Ninja Turtles for some reason. Just a bunch of nerds doing stuff. And it's such a interesting way to present that makes me so happy, and I just smile through every sequence. Everyone is having a great time. And then it's like, well, what if we created a device that can both go on the internet, use your email, and you can use it as a phone? And you're like, that's impossible. But it isn't impossible, because what we have to do is just create what's going to be the modern use of the internet and cell phones. It's so cool. And if you're a young person who has no idea how any of this happened, it's modern history that we built these things. And you just get an entire movie 2 hours long about, hey, this is what we're doing to collect data in this capacity. This is the bandwidth we need for this thing. It's so geeky, and it presents it in such a naturalistic way. It doesn't come across as like annoying or ponderous or stupid. It's just, here are these guys who know what they're doing. They're a little goofy. They like Ninja Turtles and, Wolfenstein, but they can get the job done. And then they build a company. And it's such a cool development. It's got that Halt and Catch Fire kind of vibe where you're just watching these early people create the things that are going to shape the world. It's such a good aesthetic. Everything looks fun. The music is so good. The designs are so good. And the acting is top notch. There is not a stale performance in the bunch. Everyone is having a great and fun time. Jay Baruchel, who is an actor I really appreciate, because sometimes he'll just show up and do something unexpected, and you appreciate when he just comes in and delivers. He is so good at presenting like his neurotic nature, but now it's at like a higher functioning level where he needs to both be demanding and be his quiet, squeamish guy. A great performance. Would I say it's one of the best performances of his career? Hard to say. I'd really have to think about it. But this is where you're like, yeah, nobody else could pull off what he was doing here as authentically and earnest. And it's such a great comparison to see what he does against the other lead of this movie, Glenn Howerton as Jim Balsillie. And look, I've been a Howerton fan for a long time. I've watched It's Always Sunny. This is an actor who has pretty much been waiting for like the thing he's doing on that sitcom to break out and make it into a more mainstream show. This could be a career-defining role for him where suddenly not just like awards play, but just the culture at large looks at what he's doing as like, oh, we don't have a loud, angry freak in a lot of stuff anymore. This feels like because there's so much narcissism in his performance that's just baked into him as an actor. There's just so many interesting moments where you just feel the anger and rage authentically being presented from him. And you don't get that enough anymore. But he holds it together so well and does such a great job. It's so obvious to say he's the standout performance just because, yeah, what he's doing is hard to do. What Jay's doing is hard to do as well. But Glenn just has that presence when he shows up and he's like, I'm going to fuck over the NHL. He's screaming at the NHL board. And you're like, yeah, this guy is insane and he's crazy. And this is based on a real guy. That's insane. He just comes in, works with Mike, and they slowly start to build up this company that the BlackBerry is. And it's such a cool thing to watch in retrospective where it's like, okay, you can email, you can instant text without using data. That's really cool. Boom, everything falls apart with the iPhone and we can't compete. As soon as they announce the iPhone, this movie takes a complete tonal shift where it's now a downward spiral from being on the top to we have nothing left to offer. This movie doesn't glorify anything about BlackBerry. It's just like, we created this industry, we brought it to what it's going to be, we can't compete with where it's going. And that's a really honest, accurate portrayal of what happened to that company. And this does feel like, well, this is our story. What else do we have to say on the matter? BlackBerry is a very fascinating movie. It did everything right in terms of the aesthetic, of the actors, of the writing. It came in, did the biopic thing, came out on top in a different way. It's funny, it's loose, it's energetic. It's so geeky. If you are somebody who just loves the early concept of the internet or cell phones or dial-up or any of that stuff, it's a movie that plays with those themes incredibly well and handles it with such severity that we'll probably never do something like this authentically again. It's not like The Social Network where it's like this dark, disturbing thing. Look at what this guy did. It's just, we had it all, and then we didn't because of natural forces in the community of building cell phones and smartphones. Like, we couldn't keep up. It's a beautiful way to portray that, and I think it's an incredibly unique film. It looks so gorgeous. It's got like that blurry haze thing where we're just in and out of focus of like old school video cameras from the era. It's so cool. So, BlackBerry, I am going to give an 8 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Remember, folks, you're probably watching this video on an iPhone or a Samsung. So, BlackBerry did fail in the end.